Hello, it's Stuart, the Unrepentant Atheist. Thank you for tuning in again. I've been watching lots of Atheist Experience. I've got some really good clips coming up. I've also got Alex O'Connor talking about meaning with a bishop. I'm going to be making a video out of that. But let's get going with this one. We've got Luke calling in, explaining how God signified to him that he was watching out for him. And effectively what happened was that Luke took his car out, he broke down, somebody stopped to help him, got his car going with some jump cables. And as this man was going away, he waved and he said, "God bless you." And to Luke, this was a sign from God. Well, okay, let's see Matt's take on this.
All places to place it, but
I mean, God does a really, seemingly does a great job of helping people find their car keys or making sure that somebody gets a jump start in the car, and yet, doesn't heal amputees or kids with cancer.
Yeah, I guess my only response to that would be when you were talking about how rare it would be for something to happen, because for him to say, "This is your blessing from God," that was the only time in my life I remember someone saying that to me.
Oh, come on now.
But
you're a preacher's kid, and nobody else had ever said, "This is your blessing from God," in your entire life.
or have a blessed day, or some type of usual phrase that you get from people. Or what is it? Some people in my family say, I'm passing on the blessings.
Yeah,
just passing on the blessings.
Now, I'm not calling you a liar. I just think you're kind of perhaps overemphasizing this. But you get to decide how you're going to treat all this. I just find it strange that nobody had ever said anything like that to you after having done something nice. Had nobody ever done anything nice to you before?
Well, they have, but they didn't state it exactly like he said, like, "This is your specific blessing from God," almost like it was a response to the prayer earlier that week.
Okay.
Or is it more possible that you were really looking for a response, and you looked at this situation and really grafted it on as a response?
It's a fairly trifling kind of answer to a prayer, don't you think so? I mean, if he went into hospital and he'd already had a cancer diagnosis, and the hospital called him back in, and they said, "I'm sorry, we made a mistake. We mixed up your records with somebody else's. It's somebody else that's got cancer, not you. So that's your blessing from God." I mean, that would be a bit more kind of spectacular, in terms of being a prayer answered by God, because you haven't got cancer. But I mean, breaking down on the roadside is quite a trifle.
Response to the prayer that if you hadn't made that prayer and the same type of thing occurred where your car broke down and he said that, would you have attributed the same significance as what you're doing now?
Probably not.
Well, here's a question. If you had jumper cables in your car and you had stopped to help somebody, and at the end they had said, "Hey, wish I had something to give you, but I don't," what would you have said?
I probably just would have said, "Oh, you're welcome. You don't have to give me anything."
Okay.
But these things happen to me, like, I just wonder how unlikely something would have to be before you would think there was more to the story, just like...
A lot more unlikely, similar to the example I gave about going in and having been diagnosed for cancer on the wrong medical records. Something a lot more unlikely than breaking down on a roadside, being helped, and then being told, "That's your blessing from God. You don't have to give me anything." Something a lot more unlikely than that, definitely.
The likelihood is irrelevant. The likelihood is irrelevant. There has to be a demonstrated connection. So let's say I win the lottery 2 weeks in a row after praying because I'm financially destitute, and I win the lottery, and that's $400 and some odd million, and then I take another dollar out of that and I put it in and I win the next week too. That's incredibly unlikely. And yet that does not mean that it was an answer to prayer. You have to actually demonstrate that it is, because in order...
Yeah, just to say, of course, I was jesting before. Matt is absolutely right. It doesn't matter how unlikely something is. A naturalistic explanation is always going to be preferable to a supernatural explanation.
In order to figure out a causal connection between an event and what may have been responsible for it. You have to put together a list of candidate explanations of things that are likely to be the case. And you also have to probably leave a question mark because there may be other explanations that you don't know about. And then you have to have a way to assess of those candidate explanations, which ones are more probable than another. In the case of a God, we have no way to assess whether or not it's possible or probable or how probable it is. So it ends up effectively being a zero. That doesn't mean that God didn't do it. It just means that we cannot assess the likelihood. And so by definition, every other natural explanation, no matter how unlikely, is, for all intents and purposes, more probable than a supernatural one because we have no way to demonstrate that. So if I flip a coin and it comes up heads 35 times in a row, well, was that just luck? Because we know that that's possible, that it can happen. Was it a God trying to give me a message? Why can't God do a better job of giving a message that can't be looked at as, this is incredibly improbable, but not necessarily supernatural? This is how we assess this. Now, that doesn't mean that you are in a position where you should just dismiss the supernatural. The point is, you cannot use the supernatural as an explanation until such time as we have reason to believe that the supernatural is possible, probable, and likely. And you have to have some way of kind of quantifying that.
Okay. Just the other thing I want to speak on is you said in the past that you don't give significance to number combinations. And like you were saying about unlikely events, for example, once I went to the gas station and my odometer read 111.1 miles. And I noticed this. And when I went to the gas station, I saw someone in there I hadn't seen in 15 years. So would you just say...
Why wouldn't your odometer read 1515 then?
People give significance to the number 1111. I don't know what it is about that number.
But how many times does that number appear on someone's odometer and nothing of significance actually occurs afterwards? Like fairly a lot, I would say.
I think it's part of it is that my attention was drawn to it. Like if it was some other number, I may not have even looked at it.
I'm not aware that 11 is a particularly significant number.
Sure.
Okay.
So you see somebody that you haven't seen in 15 years and your odometer reads 37982 and you don't pay any attention. You see somebody you haven't seen in 15 years and your odometer reads 111.1 and you're like, wow, that's interesting. That's weird. But as Phil was pointing out, how many times are car odometers going to read 111.1 and nothing significant happens?
I don't know. That's just the thing.
Almost every time.
Yeah.
Almost every time.
Millions of cars out there.
And the alternative is how often has something significant happen and there's a number on your odometer that you wouldn't have attributed any significance to. And by the way, this is, I kid you not, the very first time in my life anyone has ever said that 111.1 has any sort of significance.
Well, 1111 is what a lot of people give significance to. But I was just...
Literally, I've never heard anybody suggest that 1111...
Agreed. Never. Have you heard of anybody saying 1111 is particularly significant?
11 has significance.
Really?
I mean, apart from all the numbers lining up, in the same way that, okay, he's got I assume it's a trip odometer, so he's gone out and he's driven 111.1 miles. I mean, imagine if he'd driven 222.2 miles and that same thing happened. He might be phoning in saying, I saw 222.2 miles and I saw this friend. I've not seen him in 15 years. I've never heard of this 111. I mean, I've seen my odometer, for example. I've seen it go from 9,999 miles to 10,000. You get all the zeros. I've seen it go to 100,000. I thought, wow, all the zeros. And absolutely nothing of significance has happened at that moment. I've seen plenty of combinations which look special and absolutely nothing of significance happens. And maybe once in a lifetime, perhaps, something significant might happen when you see a unusual Yeah, sorry. So I'm just saying that there are so many unusual lineups like that where all the numbers are the same, or you get a line of zeros. If you've got a car, it's going to happen literally dozens of times, over say 10 years. And maybe you should keep a log of how many how many times does something significant happen when you see an unusual lineup of numbers, or lucky sevens, or whatever. Does anything, and from what I remember, every time it's happened to me, there's been absolutely nothing of any significance. It may well be that sometime there will be something of significance, but I don't think I'll turn around and say, wow, it's just turned over 100,000 miles, and I've just seen a long lost friend. Maybe that's God trying to speak to me. So, no.
Yeah.
No.
I might have missed out. But even if everybody were running around saying 1111 is significant, that doesn't make it so.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to hear your opinion on it, but thanks for talking to me.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, of course.
Appreciate it.
Well, that's about it, really. But it's this thing about coincidence. There are coincidences. There are literally trillions of events happening around the world all the time. Trillions upon trillions. I'm walking down the street, and I live on quite a busy road in the morning when I go out. There are dozens and dozens of cars passing by me, and there are license plate numbers, and occasionally there are, my name's Stuart, for example, and a private license plate number. I remember once I was coming out, and as I was coming out, a car went past, and the license plate was something like, I don't know, 101 STU, so Stu. Thought, wow, that's my name. God's trying to say something to me. No, it's just absolutely pure coincidence. How many times have I gone out there and there's been absolutely nothing, no license plates which have got any association with me whatsoever? And people do tend to attribute, these coincidences. And there's one thing for certain. Well, I'm not saying it's certain, but coincidences do happen. We've seen them. We've occasionally been amazed by them, but they're not really that remarkable at all, given that there are trillions of events going on all the time. And sooner or later, you will take, you will take two events, and you will correlate them, and you will sort of draw significance from them and connect them together. And maybe, if you're that way inclined, you might draw some kind of transcendent significance from them. But not me. I just see it. I just see it as coincidence. It happens. It happens. It's got nothing. I've got no reason to believe that anything caused it to happen. It's just one of those things. Random occurrence. Okay. Well, that's all for now. I'll be back again soon. Let me know what you think about this, and bye for now.